for no reason. You see the problem with that? Kind of runs counter our sense of rationality and our sense of how things happen in the world, right? You may have heard of Stephen Hawking, the British scientist, physicist, who has just published a book that has made the headlines, in which he claims that the new theories of physics support the idea that the universe created itself out of nothingness. I'm not going to do a criticism of Hawking here, but I think the very idea that something may come out of nothingness, if anything, reveals that the person who's saying that does not have a clear concept of what nothingness entails. He's not a philosopher, he's a physicist, and he scorns philosophy for one thing. He thinks that philosophy has been replaced by science. So, you had a question?
I'm guessing the whole nothingness is saying that something always comes from something or whatever, whatnot, but I guess the people that are saying that the universe can't come from something is because they believe something has to be made from something. But how about a higher being? I mean, a higher being can just come out of existence out of nothingness as well. So.
That's we're gonna address that question, okay? His point is, okay, fine, we need a higher being. We understand we need something before the universe, but if we posit the existence of a higher being, then we're faced with the same problem. Who created that higher being? Because we can go back in time to his point zero, and then we need a bigger God. Who created that God? And then we can do the same thing. Go back in time, and then a bigger. So we end up with a chain of gods. So we're not solving any problem, right? That's his point. Okay, let's address this question now, since he brought it up. What do you guys think? Is that a good objection to the cosmological argument that says we need an outside force, an outside being to account for the universe? But then he says, well, yeah, okay, then what do we do with that being? When was he born? Who created him? And then we go back in time. We end up with an endless chain of. We might as well stay just with the universe, right? That's his point. So, do you have an answer to that? Come on, give me a good answer. I'll give you an A in the class. No midterms, no papers, nothing. Just give me a good answer, and you have an A in this class.
I think according to like the 5 proofs of God, he doesn't have to have a creator because that would defeat his purpose. Because he was God, he would need something.
Yeah, but he doesn't find that convincing, at least in those terms. She's saying that according to traditional philosophy, she's mentioning the 5 proofs for the existence of God, which is a philosophy associated with St. Thomas Aquinas back in the 13th century. That God doesn't need a creator because that would defeat his purpose. But he might say, well, how do I understand that? He doesn't find that convincing. He wants some more of a good explanation.
Actually, it needs a point zero that you can't go back from that point on.
Say it again.
Point zero is where you cannot go back, more back.
You cannot go. Well, yeah, you could. I mean, the point is you go back in time on God's age, go to when God was born, and then what? You need a bigger God. And then you do the same, and you can always go back, right? Well, let me tell you. Bertrand Russell, a British philosopher of the Enlightenment. No, I'm sorry, not the Enlightenment, the 20th century Enlightenment, I should say. A British philosopher of the 60s Enlightenment. He was pretty much, he inspired the generation of the 60s with his liberal philosophy. Although he lived in the early 20th century, he was in early and mid 20th century. He was a philosopher and a professor at UCLA for a time. He's one of the great philosophical figures of the West in the 20th century. Okay, the first part of the 20th century, past the first half of the 20th century. Bertrand Russell, in an essay entitled "Why I Am Not a Christian," deals with this issue. He says that when he was 18, he gave the cosmological argument, the argument of origins, a great deal of thought. Because, of course, he was a smart guy, and then he thought, well, yeah, when I think of this, in his time, early 20th century or so, when he was young, we already knew that the universe had an age, and the idea was already out there, and so he knew that if you go back to the beginning of the universe, you're left without anything, that's with nothing, and therefore you need something bigger to explain the appearance of the universe. And so that he found that argument really strong, powerful, and he needed to either by looking at it from a scientific viewpoint, knowing about the age of the universe, or simply in general, we need a first cause for this. We need a cause to account for the universe. Either way, he found this argument powerful. And then he says he read the autobiography of John Stuart Mill, a 19th century British philosopher, an atheistic one, in which Mill also deals with this issue, and he tells you in his autobiography how he told his father, and his father said to him what he just said. Look, if you say that the universe needs a creator, or you need a creator, then you have to account for the creator, and you will end up with an endless chain of creators and gods. And therefore, we might as well stay with the universe as it is. That's it. We're not explaining anything by adding gods. Let me read to you. I must say that when I was a young man and was debating these questions very seriously in my mind, I, for a long time, accepted the argument of the first cause, meaning what we call here the cosmological argument. Until one day, at the age of 18, he's writing this in old age. At the age of 18, he solved the problem. He says, I read John Stuart Mill's autobiography, and there I found this sentence. My father taught me that the question, who made me, cannot be answered, since it immediately suggests the further question, who made God? That very simple sentence showed me, as I still think, the fallacy in the argument of the first cause. If everything must have a cause, then God must have a cause too. If there can be anything without a cause, it may just as well be the world as God. There you are. That's his objection in Bertrand Russell's, one of the most prominent 20th century philosophers, words. Do you have an answer, a good answer to Russell and to Chris? Okay. Let me give you the answer. We said that it is a condition of natural things to have an age and therefore to have a beginning, and that they just were not there before their beginning, correct? A condition of natural things. That's what we see in the universe. We are natural things, and the universe as a whole appears, as scientists have been able to see, that it also had a beginning, had an age and a beginning. Now, let me ask you this question. How tall is God? Give me a good answer to that. How much does he weigh? Excuse me? We don't know. Do you think he's tall or short?
Probably pretty tall.
Pretty tall? Heavy or light? What do you think?
I have no idea.
Of course you don't have any idea. We don't think of God in those terms because those are conditions of natural objects. All natural objects have a mass and have an age. But when we talk about God, if we are saying that God is outside this, giving rise to nature, we necessarily think of it with a capital I it, him, however you want to refer to God, as above nature, supernatural. And what that means is that the conditions of nature, the rules of nature, do not apply to him because he is not a natural object. Obviously, he's not a natural object. He cannot be his own creation. So if those conditions of nature, such as having weight and being tall or having an age, do not apply to God, then the question makes no sense. Whatever the conditions of supernature might be, we don't know. That's above us. We know what concerns nature, but not what concerns something which is outside nature. Okay? Like time, or we don't know. Those things are part of nature. We don't know what else may be outside. We know it must be superior to this because it gave rise to this. Right? And yes, scientists do not have an answer for what was there at the beginning of the universe. Before the beginning of the universe, I should say. I have this article here from the New York Review of Books. It's called Before the Big Bang, and it's from June 12, 1997. And it's written by Steven Weinberg, a Nobel Prize in Physics and a professor at Harvard University. And he is telling us in this article about a meeting he and other top scientists had with Al Gore in the White House. And they met with him during the Clinton administration time to lobby for some funds they needed for some special apparatus they wanted to build, a particle accelerator or something. Okay? And he's telling us about that meeting. And then he says that by the end of the meeting, when Al Gore, Vice President Al Gore, promised them support for their project and stuff, and they basically all agreed it was a great project, and all, the meeting was over, and Al Gore got up and was about to leave, and as he was walking towards the door, he turned back to them. He probably thought, hey, I have the greatest physicists of the world right in front of me. This is the time for me to ask this $1 million question. He turned back to them and said, excuse me, could you tell me what was there at the beginning of the universe before the Big Bang? He asked them that question. And you know how Steven Weinberg, a Nobel laureate in physics, reports their answer to Al Gore? He says, I don't even remember what we answered, but I am sure that it was not very enlightening. No one knows what was there at the beginning of the universe, or even if the question has any meaning. There is no theory, no hypothesis, nothing. Top scientists, Nobel Prize laureates there. They didn't know what to say. Sorry, Mr. Al Gore, we have no answer for you. We don't know. We don't even have a hypothesis, a theory, nothing. Now Stephen Hawking seems to have one. It all popped out of nothingness. Well, if you can buy that, then I guess that will be your hypothesis, your theory. Okay, so this is as far as origins. The difficulty of accounting for the material world on its own, with no outside creative force. That is if you're a true materialistic thinker, a true atheistic thinker, you must deal with that. You must somehow come up with an explanation. Now, one interesting thing about Stephen Hawking's claim now, as it has been reported in the London Times, is that he says that thanks to the last theories in physics, now we do not need to posit the existence of a creator being, of God, to account for the universe. Now, well, if you think of it, it's funny. that he will say that.